All right, everyone, we're going to go into a little bit deeper in terms of practical steps that you can take to improve your relationship with money. So, the best thing to start off with is to put a plan in action with 3 steps. So, the first thing that you might want to consider is to look at your income itself and be honest with yourself. How much money do you, on average, bring in on a daily, weekly, bi weekly, or monthly basis? You really want to see where your numbers are. When you are clear and you track your income, especially if you are an entrepreneur, a business owner, or even if you have maybe a traditional 9 to 5, you really want to know exactly how much you might have or a strong estimate. And when you are tracking your income, what I want you to do is look for abundance opportunities. Now, this is an extra piece that kind of adds the spirituality into the practical step. So instead of just seeing, okay, I only have $50,000 coming in this year, say, as of right now, I have 50K, but I wonder what opportunities are available for me to increase my income. So that's where you can think about, could I set up another stream of income? Is there an option for me to get a raise? Are bonuses available? Could I get a random check in the mail? You really want to think about opening yourself up to how money can come into you so that you actually have the opportunity to bask in abundance. I remember when I was first starting off as a teacher and I made $45,000. I was living in Memphis, Tennessee, and for me, that was like the most amount of money I had ever had at the time. And so, what I winded up doing was I moved into an apartment. My apartment was, I believe, 950 a month. I had a 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom. It was a gorgeous apartment. And I had a someone that I knew wanted to be a roommate. And it was random. I was like, okay, if that's what you want to do, sure. So she winded up saying, I told her I have a bedroom set in the other bedroom. So like I kind of need to get rid of that first. She was like, "Oh, don't worry. I'm going to put it on Craigslist and sell it for you." I was like, "Whoa. Okay." She sold that thing for 300 bucks. That was an old bedroom set that my mom purchased me when I was like in the third grade or something like that. And I made that much money off of it. That was a 20 something year old or almost 20-year-old bedroom set. Okay. Then moving forward, she wound up paying me half of the rent plus half of, like, I think it was the cable and the cable internet and then light. Yeah. So we stayed together maybe like 4 to 5 months. That was insane. So instead of just having my 50K, I winded up making extra money and saving almost half of my salary. Plus, let me keep going. I found out after I left that job about maybe 7, 8 years later that instead of just having one teacher pension, I had two. I only knew about one because I used it to invest in oil and gas. And the second one, I kept getting these emails about an account and they were just sending me updates. I'm like, what is this? because I really didn't even know that it existed. When I looked at my check stubs, I thought it was just for one account. No, I had an extra $5,000 in that account. Now, it wasn't $5,000 that I had taken out of my check. It probably was more along the lines of like one or two. And that was just from a year. So you mean to tell me a year's worth of work was $5,000 a couple of years later? Insane. And guess what I did? I used that and I transferred it over to my 401k for one of the companies that I work with. Crazy. That 45K salary was the bomb. Do you see all those opportunities that opened up because I was real with myself about how much that I was bringing in and I was open? Now, another thing that helped me during that year was I was clear on my spending and budgeting. Now I'm a little bit more laxed with it, but I'm still rigid. However, what I had was on Pinterest, I found this budgeting plan. And with that budgeting plan, I was able to see all of my bills calculated and then my income and extra spending money. And then I have had a savings plan as well. I was very clear because that was the biggest amount of money I had ever had at the time. And I wanted to really be a good steward. And I believe that when you learn how to be a good steward, and it's just biblical principles, to be completely honest, I notice that I tend to have more success when I follow in that path. I believe that God gives you certain things at a certain time because he knows that you can handle it. And if you misuse it, I will say that it unfortunately affects you. And it does not allow you to really have the things that you might want, and that is what you're doing when you're clear about your budget and your spending and your savings. Those things are very, very important, and you don't want to miss out on those opportunities because that's the foundation. That's where it all starts. And a lot of people are constantly wanting to make more money, but they don't understand how they still are in a broke place. You're going to keep going around and around in a cycle, and you're not going to feel like you're actually moving forward because of that lack of clarity, the lack of direction. So I advise you to consider doing that. And again, it's not necessarily about depriving yourself, because I want to be clear, I did not deprive myself when I was on that 45K budget, okay? I literally, my husband and I, and actually my whole family, um, we went on a trip, and that's where my husband and I winded up getting engaged. And then we went on a cruise like that summer. So we were living, okay? We had a great time. And we were also planning our wedding at the time. And we got moved into a home and all of those things. So we were able to make a lot of those things work, even on a smaller budget. And I also remember my husband saying this to me maybe like 2 weeks ago. He was like, I know people with less than what we have, and they're still happy and they're enjoying their lives. And that let me know that, first of all, happiness truly comes from within, but also that just because you have more doesn't mean that it equates to you. Or let me say this, just because if you have less doesn't mean you can't live a certain way. It all depends on what you value and how you manage your finances. I'm not a stickler. Like my husband is the type of person, if there's a quarter missing, he's going to look through it and he wants to know why. He's going to track every detail. I am, on the other hand, I don't care. It ain't that deep. But when you balance those energies, right? Because that's more so of a masculine and a feminine energy, it works for you. The third step that you want to think about is treating yourself to luxury experiences. If you are always depriving yourself of something, listen, listen. You are going to find yourself in the same spot over and over again. If you deprive and say, hey, like I'm cutting out Starbucks, I'm not going to get these high quality eggs that I like to have with my food. If you start diminishing and taking those things away, you might save money for a certain amount of time, but then you're going to be back in the same place because when you are in a famine, typically you are going to go back into a feast mentality. And if you continue to go at that pace, it's really not going to be as beneficial for you. And you won't know how to go into like moderation. So for me, I'm a pretty moderate person, meaning I do things in doses. So for example, at the beginning of this year, I made a lot of purchases around January and February because I felt like I was like those January, February, and March were my heavy investments that I was doing, whether it was purchasing assets, investing in myself, like courses. I had my coach for about 4 months, things of that nature was heavy on investments. I went to Paris and got to do some other things, but around June, July-ish, I really started to like cut back the second half of the year. Now, I still have trips and things like that. Like, I'm not depriving myself. But what I'm doing is I'm like, okay, now I want to focus a little more on saving. And because I have that balance and I'm not just trying to deprive myself the entire time, I personally, like, not even including the things that my spouse and I have together, I personally have saved a lot of money. And I'm very proud of that because it allows me to build into 35. Like for me, 35 is a very big age that is pivotal. And at 35, I have a certain goal of what I would like to achieve in my financial life, career, marriage, as a mother, and even with my health and wellness, I have a lot of growth that I would like to make. And if I were always just focused on those goals and I didn't treat myself to those beautiful experiences, yeah, I could probably hit the goal much faster. But how happy would I be? The quality of life that you have is important. It's not just about reaching a goal. You actually want to enjoy the process. Think about those things as you are considering, your budgeting, your planning. Find ways where you can say, hey, I can spend, $6 to $7 at Starbucks each week if that brings me joy. I can plan one vacation a year where I'm able to go somewhere that I really like and explore. And I can set that money to the side because that is an important part of my life because we don't know where life is going to take us. We don't know a lot of things. So many things are uncertain. So why would you take away the joys and things that light you up? Again, in moderation. in moderation. That is where you're going to find the most success.